Hello everyone, our topic for today is all about soil organic matter. So let's begin. When you say soil organic matter, it encompasses all the organic components of the soil. It includes the plant residue or the fresh residues, the decomposing organic matter, the stable organic matter, and living organisms. Looking at this pie chart, fresh residue consists of less than 10% by volume of soil organic matter. Decomposing organic matter or the active fraction is 33 to 50%. Stable organic matter or the humus is also 33 to 50%, while the living organisms is or are less than 5%. The soil organic matter content of agricultural topsoil is usually in the range of 1 to 6%. This amount is the result of all the additions and losses of soil organic matter that have occurred over the years. So in this figure, you can see a soil organic matter extraction test. So based on the soil organic matter content, you can notice that the higher the organic matter content, the darker the color of the soil is. The soil organic matter is labile, meaning it can decline rapidly if the soil environment changes, and it is renewable, meaning it can be replenished by inputs of organic material to the soil. Now, to improve the soil organic matter or to have adequate levels can be maintained with proper fertilization, crop rotations, and tillage practices if crop residues are returned to the soil. By the way, labile means constantly or readily undergoing chemical, physical, or biological change or breakdown, meaning the soil organic matter is unstable. When you say fresh residues, it's one of the components of organic matter. Fresh residues are up to 10% of the organic matter. It is comprised mainly of litter fall, and much can be recognized as plant residue. Plant residues are comprised of carbohydrates, lignins, proteins, fats, waxes, and tannins, which are 60, 25, 10, and 5% respectively by volume. By the way, lignin is an amorphous polymer related to cellulose that provides rigidity that, and together with cellulose, forms the body cell walls of plants and the cementing material between them. Since 60% of plant residues are made up of carbohydrates, carbohydrates are made up of the following: the cellulose, the hemicellulose, the sugars, and starch. Now let's discuss the rates of plant residue decomposition. The resistance to decomposition in increasing order is that the first ones to decompose are the sugars, the starches, and the proteins, followed by the hemicellulose and cellulose, followed by fats, waxes, and lignins. Lignins, waxes, and fats are those that are relatively difficult or hard to decompose. Let's look at another component of the organic matter, which is the active fraction or the actively decomposing organic matter. The plant material is transformed from one organic compound to another mainly by the soil organisms. And organisms create byproducts, waste, and cell tissue during the decomposition. And the compounds released as waste by one organism can often be used as food by another. 10 to 30% of the soil organic matter, which is the active fraction, is responsible for maintaining the soil organisms or soil microorganisms. And it is most susceptible to soil management practices. So in this figure, the active fraction of the organic matter is in between those that are easily decomposed and those that are resistant to decomposition. Another component of organic matter are the living organisms. In a soil, which at first has no readily decomposable materials, adding fresh tissue under favorable conditions would first immediately start rapid multiplication of bacteria, fungi, and actinomycetes, which are soon actively decomposing the fresh tissue. So, the living organisms are actually those that are responsible for decomposition of the fresh residues, and also, of course, on the active decomposition or active fluction of the, the organic matter. So this is the decomposition process. Once you have an organic residue, which can be fresh plant residue, it could um, interact or used by decomposers such as the bacteria and fungi. Further decomposition process would attain the resistant to decomposition one or the stable one, which is the humus. Other organic substances or organic elements would undergo mineralization, which is beneficial because it is a form of nutrient release to the plants. And from those that are mineralized, it can be assimilated back by the living organisms or the microorganisms. And then during the decomposition process, you can notice in this figure that there will be heat and carbon dioxide that will be released. And as most readily available energy sources are used up, microorganisms again become relatively inactive, leaving behind a dark mixture usually referred to as the humus or a stable organic compound. So, to maintain or to have adequate levels of organic matter, you can continuously add organic matter or fresh residues to the soil. It will increase the biological activity in the soil because they will be consumed. Now, those organic materials will be consumed by the microorganisms. And during the decomposition, nutrients could be released, humus will form, and it can actually improve the soil irrigation, which is beneficial to plants for a lot of purposes. Nutrient holding capacity and water holding capacity. It will improve the structure, and then it will improve the soil health, and all of this nutrient release, humus formation, and improvement of soil health and structure will benefit the plants. Now let's move on discussing the most important component of soil organic matter, which is the humus. The newly formed humus includes is composed of combination of resistant materials from the original plant tissue and compounds synthesized as part of the microorganism's tissue, which remain as the organisms die. Humus is resistant to further microbial attack. That is why it is called stable. And because of that, the nitrogen and phosphorus content are protected from ready solubility. The soil organic compounds become stabilized and resistant to further changes by microorganisms. And this part of the organic matter acts like a sponge and can absorb 6 times its weight in water. So if you can remember our discussion on the organic colloid, that is actually the humus. Now let's look on the different characteristics of humus. First, it has a very high surface area per unit mass. It generally exceeds that of the silicate clays. Its colloidal surfaces are negatively charged as a result of hydrogen ion dissociations from the carboxylic and the phenolic groups. And the extent of its negative charge is pH dependent. For example, at high pH, the cation exchange capacity of humus on a mass basis is 150 to 400 centimoles per kilogram. Other characteristics of humus are it has a high water holding capacity, in which on a mass basis is 4 to 5 times that of the silicate clays. And also, it plays an important role in aggregate formation and stability because it can act as a cementing agent or it can induce aggregation. The highly complex humus molecules contain chemical structures that absorb nearly all wavelengths of visible light, giving a characteristic black color. So now let's move on to the contributions of organic matter to soil properties. So organic matter affects the physical, the chemical, and also the microbiological properties of soils. And one of the most distinct effects of the organic matter is that it makes the color of the soil darker, which indicates higher level of fertility. It also it is also an effective cementing agent because it encourages granulation. And the benefit of that is that, and the benefits of this are increased aeration, permeability, and water holding capacity of the soils. Organic matter also contributes some of the nutrients for plant growth, such as nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, and organic acids, such as the carbonic acid. And through carbonic acids, nutrient elements are released from minerals, so they are mineralized or become available for plant uptake. And organic matter in colloidal form has a very high cation exchange capacity. So if we go back to what we have discussed on the topic on soil colloid, we all know that the organic colloid in the soil is the humus. And the humus has a high cation exchange capacity greater than that of Montmorille unitic clay. And even in soils of moderate organic matter content, it accounts for at least 30% of the absorbing power of soils. What else? Humus also reduces plasticity and stickiness of the soil. And it is important in heavy clays to make it more friable, meaning easier to cultivate, because we all know that heavy soils or heavy clays are not friable and are relatively hard to cultivate in terms of crop management. Another is that organic matter serves as the source of carbon and energy for most soil organisms. It's the main food source of organisms living in the soil, and it is believed to contain growth promoting substances released during organic matter decomposition. That is why it can stimulate growth of plants and other soil organisms. In some cases, very high amounts of soil organic matter could be harmful. For example, in paddy or flooded soils, the anaerobic decomposition of organic matter may produce toxic gases and organic acids which may kill newly transplanted rice seedlings. Now let us move to the factors affecting accumulation of organic matter. Mineral soils contain less than 1 to 20% organic matter. And on the average, cultivated soils contain 2 to 3% organic matter. And accumulation of soil organic matter is affected by the climate, the type of vegetation, soil texture, and forming. So let's talk about first on the climate. So one of the factors related to climate is the temperature. So soil organic matter increases to 3 times for every 10% drop in mean annual temperature. So, meaning the colder or the lower the temperature is, the higher the organic matter accumulation. And that is because due to the slower decay of organic matter under cooler temperatures. Another is moisture. So under the climate, we have the moisture because of rainfall. So organic matter is also higher in areas of higher effective moisture, meaning there is high rainfall. It encourages more vegetative growth. How about in texture? So for example, in sandy soils accumulate less organic matter than clayey soils. And because of that, it stores less moisture. It is less fertile and better aerated than clayey soils. And in terms of vegetation, there is greater accumulation of organic matter in grasslands than in forests. Why is that so? Because the faster rate of turnover in grassland due to the shorter life cycle is present. Because grasses are annuals, there is faster rate of turnover of organic matter. There is an interaction between the type of vegetation and climate. For example, grasslands are dominant in drier areas or in dried areas. And also, the type of cultivation or farming system can affect the accumulation of organic matter. When the soil is cultivated, the organic matter rapidly declines due to the following. There is greater oxidation brought about by loosening of the soil and stimulation of microbial activity. Farming systems that affect biomass production and utilization or conservation could increase or decrease the accumulation of organic matter. For example, in terms of water management, use of different variety, nutrient management, erosion control measures, all of this will affect the soil organic matter content. So right now we are finished on the factors affecting the accumulation of organic matter. Now, let's discuss the factors affecting the decay or decomposition of organic matter. So decay is retarded if the material is in large pieces, meaning it is dense or non-porous. And farmers can accelerate the decay of bulky crop residues by chopping and spreading them, or cultivating them into the soil or turning livestock onto the field. So this factor is what is the property or what are the properties of the particular organic material being decomposed. Another factor that affects the rate of organic matter decay is of course, the amount of the organic material and each stage of decay. Because the rate of decay is roughly proportional to the amount present. High relative decay rates approaching 50% per week are common in fresh plant materials, but for humus, a typical rate would be only 3% per year. That is why humus is considered a stable product of organic matter decomposition and it cannot be further degraded. Another factor is the Other factors are the pH, salinity, and mineral nutrients. For example, decay is inhibited by extremes of soil pH, meaning a pH below 4.5 and above 9. Very high salinity and deficiencies of mineral nutrients, most commonly the deficiency of nitrogen, can inhibit the decay of organic matter. An expression of these constraints is obscured because the same factors also constrain organic matter production. Another factor is water. So decay, like plant growth, goes faster at water potentials in the range of -10 to -50 kilopascals and slows progressively as the soil becomes drier. And at very high water potentials, approaching saturation, less than 10 to 0 kilopascals, decay slows markedly because of the shortage of oxygen. Other factors are temperature and oxygen. So, for example, in temperature, in cold weather, crop residues can be slow to decompose and organic manures is slow to release nutrients. While in terms of oxygen, anoxia or the absence of oxygen slows the decay of organic matter in general and of lignin and humus in particular. So if you happen to have some experience on compost making, this is the reason why oxygen is needed in compost making to be able to fasten the decomposition rate of the organic materials that you are using in making your compost. Now, how soil organic matter is being measured? Organic matter is usually measured in the laboratory as organic carbon, and soil organic matter is estimated to contain 58% organic carbon. Actually, it varies from 40 to 58%, with the rest of the soil organic matter comprising of other elements such as 5% nitrogen, 0.5% P, and 0.5% S. So basically, how is soil organic matter being managed? Number one, continuous supply of organic materials must be added to the soil. So the primary sources of organic materials are the following. You can use plant residues or return crop residues, animal manures, addition of compost, and other organic waste. You can also plant some cover crops because cover crops can provide protected cover and also additional organic material to the soil. What else? You should apply adequate nitrogen inputs as and because they are requisite for sufficient organic matter levels. And you could plant legumes or include legumes in crop rotation because we all know that leguminous crops can fix nitrogen from the atmosphere with the help of nitrogen fixing bacteria. Judicious use of nitrogen fertilizers to enhance high soil productivity may also be practiced, and it can minimize nitrogen loss as a result of leaching, erosion, or volatilization because nitrogen could be easily leached from the soil or volatilized to the atmosphere as nitrogen gas. Number three, maximum plant growth will increase the amount of organic matter added to the soil from crop residues. Even if some parts are removed in harvest, vigorously growing plants provide below and above ground residues as major sources of organic matter. So that is why for example, in organic agriculture, the return of crop residues is being encouraged. Application of lime and nutrients may be needed to address the problem on chemical toxicities and nutrient deficiencies. Could also practice conservation tillage. So the tillage must be limited to that needed to control weeds, and to maintain adequate soil aeration. Example of conservation tillage is minimum tillage. Minimum tillage can leave much of the plant residues on or near the soil surface. It can slow down the rate of residue decomposition and reduce erosion and losses. Managing the soil organic matter, the perennial vegetation should be encouraged and maintained. Improve agricultural production on existing farmlands should be pursued. That is to allow land currently under natural ecosystem to be left undisturbed. So those are the practices or management that can improve the soil organic matter. Now, let's talk about the carbon to nitrogen ratio of organic materials. The carbon to nitrogen ratio of organic materials vary widely. Examples of organic materials are the following, including their carbon to nitrogen ratio. The bark of trees having 200 is to 1, meaning 200 carbon is to 1 nitrogen. Rice straw is 50 is to 1. Corn stover is 55 is to 1, and so on. So in terms of carbon to nitrogen ratio, if we are talking about decomposition, the higher the carbon to nitrogen ratio of an organic material, the slower the rate of the decomposition. So there is an inverse or indirect relationship between the CN ratio and the rate of decomposition. When CN ratio is high, nitrogen is temporarily immobilized and unavailable for plant use. Soil organisms use up carbon and nitrogen at approximate proportion of 30 parts carbon for every part of nitrogen. If there is too little nitrogen, the organism will use whatever N is released by the organic matter decay and stores it in their bodies until they die. As decomposition proceeds, the carbon to nitrogen ratio narrows down and stabilizes. So organic matter attains a more or less constant carbon to nitrogen ratio of 10 is to 1. The optimum carbon to nitrogen ratio of organic materials for faster decomposition and less or zero N immobilization is about 20 is to 1. Why do we need or why do we desire less or zero N immobilization? That is for the N or the nitrogen to be used by the plants for it to be available for plant uptake. The carbon to nitrogen ratio of organic material is determined by the analysis of the total carbon and nitrogen. Now, let's take a look on the relationship of soil organic matter level and agricultural practices. Plant biomass and roots left on or in the soil contribute to soil carbon or soil organic matter and to environmental and production benefits. Tillage facilitates biochemical degradation of organic matter and loss of carbon or soil organic matter. Improved management can make carbon easy to come with more cropping intensity and or cover crops and result in net carbon sequestration. In addition, improved management can make carbon slow to go, that is with residue management and or less tillage, and result in net carbon sequestration. Intensive tillage enhances biological oxidation and therefore decreases or loses soil carbon irrespective of residue management. That's all for soil organic matter. I hope you learned from this video. Please don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Thank you very much.